Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another one of my FutureFight Vanguard videos. And happy Friday, guys. A lot of you should be very happy that it's Friday, as is the end of the work week for most people. But yeah, it's a pretty Friday outside, and on this pretty Friday, we're going to talk about a disgusting deck. So I kind of feel bad. But today is our Narukami GB8 video. So I don't think there's anything that needs to be said before we get into it, so let's just get right into it. While I am flipping these G zones, however, I will say the Patreon has been rising in support like wildly, guys, so I appreciate you guys' support for that. Really touches my heart, some of you guys' comments and things to me day to day, so I will try to keep up the good work to please you guys, so thank you guys for supporting me as you do. But getting right into our grade 3s, we have 4 Dragonic Vanquisher, so we're going to be running the Vanquisher deck as our GB8 deck. Eradicators can probably reach it too with the Sweep Command build, but I just didn't want to showcase that one because it's less fun to me than this build. But Dragonic Vanquisher, what it does is it has 2 abilities. The first one is a Generation Break 2 ability, the second one is an On Stride ability. So the Generation Break 2 ability is when an opponent's rearguard is put into the drop zone due to an effect from one of your cards, this unit gets plus 3000 in the critical. Now, the GB2 is kind of sucks on an offensive turn, but it also works during your opponent's turn when you're doing it defensively. So that's when it becomes really good because it can make your Vanquisher 14k base, 17k base, 20k base, depending on how many rear guards you bind during their turn. Depending on how many of the rear guards you retire in general during their turn. So just be aware of that. It can lead up to pretty good powers or power amounts for you to do things with it. The second skill is On Stride. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards in their front row and retire it, and then it gets bound. Then we have, as our backup grade 3, Great Composure Dragon. It really doesn't have a skill except for on the rear guard it gets minus 3000 power. So we do run this because we don't specifically need to be a Vanquisher Vanguard for anything in this deck except for Chain Bolt Dragoon. So Great Composure works great because if you're against stuff like Gear Chronicle or Murakumo when they would hit you with a bunch of 11k attacks, you can just ride or you can just choose to ride Great Composure over Dragonic Vanquisher, and when that happens they can't hit you because you're 12k base. Also, all of your strides are 27k a base, so when you have a 7k boosting it's 34 if that's relevant. Most of the time it's not, but sometimes it is if your opponent's cross-ridden and stuff like that. But moving on to our grade 2s, we run 11 grade 2s, and we run 4 Martial Arts Dragon as our first grade 2. So this grade 2 prevents, it's like an anti-rush card for your opponent. So it's really good because it prevents your opponent from attacking you a lot without getting punished for it in the early game, which seems to be a trend nowadays anyways. So what Martial Arts Dragon does is when it's placed on the Vanguard circle, you can counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. So you basically counterblast 1 and Soul Blast out the grade 1 that you rode. And then you choose a rear guard in your opponent's front row, and then you retire and bind it. So this card can also be used to prevent your opponent from Sib-Breezing you. If you don't have a grade 3, you can just re-ride Martial Arts Dragon if you really don't want a G-assist. And then if they have a unit in the front row, you can retire bind again. So it helps you build up for Thunderstrike even before Generation Break, which is really good. Also, when you do it, your starter goes up to a 7k booster. So sometimes that's relevant, sometimes, like I said, it's not. When your opponent has 11k grade 2s and stuff like that, they'll usually rush you. So that way you'll be able to attack them for 16. Then its second ability is just an ability that makes it a beater. If you're Thunderstrike 2 and Generation Break 1, during your turn, this unit gets plus 3000 power. So Thunderstrike, this is our first ability in the deck that I'm going over with Thunderstrike. So for those of you who don't know, Thunderstrike is Narukami's keyword. And what Thunderstrike does is it counts however many cards are bound. So if your opponent has 1 card in the bind zone, then you're Thunderstrike 1. If your opponent has 2 cards, Thunderstrike 2, 3 cards, Thunderstrike 3, and etc. So yeah, the point of this deck is just to bind a lot of your opponent's cards so that you can hit high Thunderstrike amounts. And then there's also some cards like Voltage and VMAX that like basically reward you for binding all their cards. Then we have for Shatura. This card is amazing. Demonic Dragon Berserker Shatura. So it has 2 abilities. The first one is a continuous ability that says this unit cannot attack a rearguard. So unless you find a way for this for Shatura to lose its continuous ability, which in this deck there's no way, this unit can never attack a rearguard ever. So only attack Vanguard with it. Also, its rearguard ability is during your turn it gets 3,000 power. And then you get to counterblast 1 when it hits, and then draw a card and choose a card in your opponent's drop zone and bind it. So this is really useful against G decks specifically, and Legion decks and cards that can put cards back from the drop zone to the deck. Because when your Shatura hits, not only do you get to draw a card, but you get to choose a card and bind and make them lose it forever, basically. So you can choose like their PGs so that they don't get unflips when they use their next PG, and like a lot of stuff like that. Very solid card. So then for the last of our grade 2s, we run 3 Voltage Horn Dragon. What Voltage Horn Dragon is, it has to be boosted when it uses this ability, but it's Generation Break 1, Counterblast 1. If it's boosted, then your opponent chooses one of their rear guards and retire and binds it. So pretty good if you can, like, it's just like another control like tool basically. It sucks that your opponent gets to choose, but then again, if you force your opponent down to the point where they only have like important units to choose from, then it'll be really good for you to use Voltage Horn. Voltage Horn also synchronizes very, very well with VNE and Chain Bolt Dragoon, so you can use them all at the same time, even if you boost with VNE, so pretty good. So like a combo that I guess I can mention is if I were to pull this out, and this out. Sorry, these are supposed to be switched. Oh man, I can't move this out now that I moved it to the Vanguard circle. Rest in peace. Okay, so we're gonna open our deck and put a Vanquisher on our Vanguard circle just so we can move this out. Okay. So what you do is when you attack with Voltage Horn, boosted by VNE, you would counterblast 1, right? So this is still during the attack. You counterblast 1, and then they choose a unit and retire bind it. Then you do VNE skill, which is when your opponent's rearguard is put into the drop zone due to an effect from one of your cards. You can put this unit to the top of your deck, shuffle, draw a card, and unflip a damage. And then simultaneously, you can use Chain Bolt Dragoon skill to bind a card in their drop zone, and then choose a unit against plus 2,000 power. So you can choose Voltage Horn, and it'll become 11, which is still hitting your opponent. So very solid combo. Moving on with our grade 1s, we ran 4 Mighty Bolt Dragoon, Stride Fighter, pretty self-explanatory. We ran 4 Unflip PGs, Anastasia. We ran 4 Chain Bolt, you see 3 here, but 1's also on the field. So yeah, we ran 4 Chain Bolt Dragoon, very, very good card. Basically chains or helps you grow Thunderstrike even faster when you're on Vanquisher. So whenever your opponent's rearguard is put into the drop zone due to an effect from one of your cards, this also works on a defensive turn. So during your opponent's turn, if you use the MP Dragon G-Guard on them, the new one, or Bulwark, you can also trigger your Chain Bolt Dragoons that are on the field as well. So yeah, whenever your opponent's card is retired due to an effect from one of our cards, if we have Vanquisher in our Vanguard name, your opponent chooses a card from the drop zone, binds it face up, and then if he or she binds a card, then we get to choose one of our units and give it plus 2,000 power until the end of the turn, which is what I was talking about with Voltage Horn, so pretty cool. The rest of our grade 1s, we run 2 Dragon Dancer Fatine. So what Fatine does is Thunderstrike 2, Soul Blast 1, draw a card. So pretty good. I was going to say that you can use this in the early game, like before G-Break, which you can use it before G-Break, but you have to be Thunderstrike 2, which is unlikely unless you use Martial Arts Dragon twice, and if you did, you probably have no soul. So that is a thing. Then we have our starter, Aesthetic Draco Kid. So what Aesthetic Draco Kid does is it has 3 abilities. The first one is Forerunner, meaning that it can be moved back when you ride a grade 1 on it. Then the second ability is Thunderstrike 1, non-G break. So like I was talking about, if you bind with Martial Arts Dragon, you can reach this G break. So when this unit boosts, it gets 7 or it gets 2,000 power, making it a 7k booster. Its third ability is Generation Break 1, and whenever any other rearguard is retired from rearguard due to an effect from a card, this is like, be very, I guess pay attention to whenever it says when a card is retired due to an effect from our card, and when a card says due to an effect from a card, because this means any card. So like, let's say our opponent's playing Shadow Paladin. When they retire their unit due to an effect from our or from any card, which is they're retiring due to their own card, we can pay the cost and retire our unit, and then they have to choose one of their rear guards and retire bind it. So if Shadow Paladin like leaves a really important unit on the board, you can like make them retire bind it with this, which is really cool. Then you have 4 Resef, which is the Vanquisher crit trigger that shoves itself into Soul when Vanguard attacks with Vanquisher in its name, and then you draw a card and your Vanguard gets plus 5,000 power. Then we have 4 Dragon Dancer Vieni. So what Vieni does, I kind of explained it when I was explaining the Voltage Horn combo, but whenever your opponent's rearguard is put into the drop zone due to an effect from one of your cards, you put this unit on the top of your deck, and if you do, you shuffle your deck, draw a card, and then you choose a damage and turn it face up. So if you have multiples of these on the field, it's really good like damage resource, so helps you with your damage. Also put stand triggers back to your deck when you have like really big rearguard columns from Conquest Dragon, Voltage, or our GB8 Closer Dragon. So then we have 4 Suspicious Jin, best draw trigger ever in Narukami. Then we have 4 Mediate Draco Kid, and this guy pretty much looks like he's just meditating on how he can make you really sad. Because all of the G guards in Narukami pretty much make your opponent kind of sad. But it has an ability that says whenever this card is discarded from your hand for cost to call MP Dragon, so whenever you go into the new G guard from the Fighters Collection, the heal trigger from the Fighters Collection will allow you to Soul Blast 1 and unflip damage as long as you only have 1 damage or less face up. So if you have 0 unflip damage or 1 face up damage, it'll allow you to Soul Blast 1 to countercharge 1, which is pretty good. Because most of the G guards that those kind of effects pair with have a counter blast 1 for their G guard effect, but this one doesn't, so it's just a free countercharge, which is really cool. So then for our G zone, we run 4 Conquering Supreme Dragon Dragonic Vanquisher Voltage. So what Voltage does is during the main phase, you turn it face up to activate its ability, and then until the end of the turn, this unit gets 2 abilities. The first ability says when this unit's attack hits a Vanguard, your opponent has to retire one of their cards, and then you get to choose 2 cards from their drop zone and bind them face up. So the on-hit ability is really, really good. It's literally what Zorus does, but in a new form because they wanted to create it in a Stride Flipper form. And then it has a Generation Break 3 ability as well, kind of like Alt-Mile, Stride Alt-Mile, and Stride Asha, where it has an initial effect that it does, and then it has like a better effect for its Generation Break 3. So what it does is Generation Break 3 continuous during your turn. All the units in your front row get plus 3,000 power for each card in your opponent's bind zone. So let's say that you're Thunderstrike 5, your front row gets 15k. So it's really, really good to force your opponent into a corner where they have to guard either really big attacks or take the attacks with on-hit effects like Shatura and stuff like that. So yeah, we run 4 Voltage, we run 4 Conquest Dragon. So what Conquest Dragon does is if the number, during the main phase, you flip 1 face up, and it's once per turn, so you can't do it like the ace and flip 2 or anything like that. So it's pretty much a GB2 ability before GB2 was made a thing. So you flip a Conquest Dragon from your G-Zone face up, and then if the number of cards in your G-Zone is 2 or more, including the Conquest that you just flipped up, you choose one of your opponent's rear guards in the front row, retire it, and then all the units in your front row get plus 5,000 power for every open rear guard circle in their front row. So they can only have one of 2 options, or sorry, one of 3 options. or sorry, it's only one of two options after using Conquest because you'll retire one. So they can either have one rearguard left in their front row, or two rearguards left in, or 0 rearguards. Sorry, like 2 will be retired basically. So you can either have one rearguard left in the front row, meaning that we used Conquest and they originally had 2, or if we use Conquest when they have 1 in the front row, we retire it and then they have an open front row, meaning that our all of our units in our front row get plus 5,000 if it's 1 left, and then they get plus 10,000 if there's none left in the front row. So pretty good card. Then our GB8, which is pretty amazing actually. Like, it's pretty OP in a lot of situations, and it can screw your opponent over depending on what clan they're playing. I know Luard and Night Rose like definitely suffer heavily from this GB8. So what this GB8 does is when it's placed on the Vanguard circle, you retire all of the rearguards of all fighters. So you retire all of your rearguards and all of your opponent's rearguards, and then you bind cards in your opponent's drop zone. You bind all the cards in your opponent's drop zone. So like every card in their drop zone just automatically goes to the bind zone. And then this unit gives 2,000 power to all of your cards on the board for every card in all fighters' bind zones. Oh wow, I didn't even know that. So it includes our own bind zone as well. So if we're fighting the Narukami mirror match, like we get to count our bind zone as well, which is pretty cool. I never knew that. But usually when you end up going into this, you end up binding like something like 20 cards usually from your opponent's drop zone at that point in the game. So with the Thunderstrike that you already had, assuming that you're already like Thunderstrike 5 or something, you'll have 25 in the bind zone. So you do 25 times 2, and then that's 50,000, and so all of your rearguards get 50,000. So if this were our board, Voltage Horn, we would get 50,000 to this Voltage Horn, 50,000 to this Vianney, and 50,000 to this Chain Bolt, and we would be on the GB8. This is assuming that we played these from our hand after, because remember that it board wipes as soon as you go into it. So boosted by this, this is something like 100k or something like that. Yeah, so it's literally 113k attack, guys. So yeah, really, really strong card. Probably one of the stronger GB8s, if not one of the best ones. So then we run 1 VMAX. We could run 2 VMAXs, but I really didn't want to because VMAX is kind of situational. Depending on what you're against, they can stop you from going Thunderstrike 5 sometimes. So it has a Generation Break 3 ability that says it's Thunderstrike 5, Counterblast 2. At the end of the battle that this unit attacks a Vanguard, if your opponent has no rear guards, then you can pay the cost and deal your opponent's Vanguard 1 damage, which means that you can. This is one of the best cards in the game because you can. A lot of cards, when they deal you a damage by an effect, it says that your opponent has to have 4 or less damage, meaning that you can never just kill them using the effect because they'll always just put them to 5. But if your opponent's at 5 against VMAX and then you use the effect, you get to deal them a damage regardless, so you can end the game off of its effect, which is really, really good. But do keep in mind that the damage that VMAX deals does count as a damage tech, so your opponent can still 6 damage heal out of VMAX skill. Then the second ability is whenever this unit would choose a unit to attack, you choose one of your opponent's rear guards for each face-up card with Vanquisher in its name, and then this unit battles all of the rear guards and the Vanguard in 1 attack. So this is actually pretty interesting because the way that it's worded, I've never read it this way before, but it says when it would choose a unit to attack. So, okay, never mind. When this unit would choose a unit to attack, it pretty much does it for you. So, for every like Vanquisher G card face up in your G zone, which for us is only Voltage because it's the only card out right now. So you can, with VMAX, you have the possibility to attack 4 rearguards and the Vanguard at the same time, which is what opens up for its Generation Break 3 ability to deal them a damage. So you can also like keep in mind that you can also attack them with VMAX when they're at 3 damage, and if they no guard it, then you clear their board, and if you check a crit during your it basically makes it a 1 crit to game, because if you check a crit, you do 2 damage to them, and then you'll activate the Generation Break 3 Thunderstrike 5 to deal another damage to them, which will put them at 6 damage unless they heal out. So very, very good solid card. I usually end up going to this card after Closer Dragon, actually. So we ran one Thunder Dragon Knight Zorus. A lot of people don't run this card, but I like this card specifically because we don't have to waste a voltage on turn 1. We can just do a Zorus, which gives them multiple turns of like on-hit pressure from our Vanguard, which eventually they're just going to take it. So yeah, it's very good that way. Basically what Zorus does is it does the first skill of voltage that we talked about. So whenever this unit's attack hits a Vanguard, your opponent chooses one of their rear guards, retires it, and then we choose 2 cards from their drop zone and bind them. So very good. We don't run Sabreeze in this deck because I don't think that's necessary. Also, your counterboss are a lot more important to you in this deck than they are in other decks, so you can't really afford to run Sabreeze. I mean, you can, but it would be kind of hurtful in my opinion. Especially because when your opponent's against this, like, they're probably not going to hesitate in the early game to ride up because you have things like Shatura on the board, and that's pretty scary to deal with when you're not on a high defense. So we have 2 of the new G Guardian, Sky Guardian, Supreme Dragon, and P Dragon. So what MP Dragon does is when it's placed on the guard circle, you flip a G Guardian face up, just like all the other cards from the fighter selection. And if you do, your opponent chooses one of their rear guards and retire binds it. So they bind a rear guard, and then if the number of rear guards that your opponent has is 2 or more than yours, then your opponent chooses another one of their rear guards and retires it. So basically, in order, it has like a 2-check timing. For those of you who don't know what that means that the skill checks the board state twice. So the first time you play it, it checks the board state, and your opponent binds one of their cards basically automatically. But then after the bind, it checks. So like, let's say that your opponent has 3 rear guards and you have 1 rear guard. If you use a P Dragon and then they bind one, they have 2 left, which is not 2 or more than your 1 rear guard, so they won't retire a card. However, if they have 4 rear guards, then and you have 1, then you use this, and then they have to retire bind 1, and then they also have to get to retire 1 as well. And then with your starter on the board, usually you can use MP Dragon and your starter to force more out of them. So it's really good. Just assume that your opponent had 4 rear guards and they attacked you. Like, they would have to get rid of 3 cards with that combo, which is sickening. Yeah, and then on top of that, your Vanquisher would get plus 9k. So it would be a 20k defense base, which is really good. So then we have, going back to our G zone, we have 2 Bulwark Dragon. Bulwark Dragon was our other G guard that was the best G guard before we got MP Dragon. So what Bulwark Dragon does is when you're Thunderstrike 3, this unit gets plus 10,000 shield. And then at the end of the battle that it was placed on the guard circle, you choose 1 rear guard and rest for every 4 cards in your opponent's bind zone, and you retire it. So pretty good. If your opponent has like multiple cards rested and you guard with Bulwark and they have like 12 cards in their bind zone, then this card will retire 3 rest units. So very solid card. Then we have Vitra. With Vitra is just Thunderstrike 1. This unit gets plus 5,000 shield. So it's a 31k defense if you're at least Thunderstrike 1. So pretty good effect. We are going to get right into the games here. We're opening up our Cardfight area. And there's our Cardfight area. Okay, so we're gonna load our replay. This is Narukami GB8 1. So it looks like the first game we're playing against Messiahs, which is, you know, pretty decent. I wouldn't say it's a bad matchup or anything. Like, it's just kind of like a chill matchup. But he rides Destiny Dealer and attacks us after we ride Chain Bolt for our first turn. Then we ride Voltatorn and play Shatura. He unfortunately checks a draw trigger, but we do get to draw a card. And we don't bind one because he doesn't have anything in his drop zone. So he attacks 17 to our Vanguard, we take it, we get a draw trigger this time, and we ride Great Composure Dragon. And then we attack him with Shatura again, he lets it hit, so we counterboss 1 draw card. And then we attack with Great Composure, Twin Drive, get nothing. and he takes the damage. Then he goes into Alter Ego, strides into Flagellate Messiah, and then uses the Vanguard skill to lock, and then uses Vanguard skill as he's attacking because he doesn't have good rear guards to call. And then just checks 3 Sacrifice Messiahs, so we only take 1 damage, which is pretty lucky for us because usually the first turn of Messiahs is a lot more devastating than that. But we play 2 Viennese and a Voltitorn. So what we do is we activate Voltitorn's skill to make him bind his starter, and then we use our Viennese to put it back to the deck, shuffle, draw a card, and unflip, and then we use the other Viennese as well. We forgot to unflip one here, which kind of sucks, but I don't think that it was relevant right now, at least. So this card doesn't unlock because it's Omega locked, and then he goes into Transulse because we cleared his board, so he unlocks our Shatura, which we will take those because we'll take an unlocked Shatura for a Voltitorn. They're both dangerous to him, so it should be no issue. So here we go into Voltage, and our front row does get plus 3k because he has 1 card bound. Then we play 2 Chain Bolts. So we attack him for 21, he guards it, and then we attack him for 30, and he no guards, so we do check a stand trigger, standing Shatura, and then he takes the damage, and we choose 2 cards to bind, and so we bind the PG and the crit in his drop zone, and then because the number of cards in the bind zone increase, the number of the number of power that our front row gets also increases. So then that's why I gave Shatura plus 6k. So Shatura is now attacking for 25 instead of 19. He chooses to G-Guard into the new G-Guard but not use the skill. So I guess that's fine. And then we unlock our other 2 cards. He strides with 2 cards here, which is unfortunate for him. Goes into Flagellate Messiah again, counterblast 1, and locks one of his rear guards so that he can lock one of ours. And then he plays 2 crit triggers to attack our Shatura, which we should have just let go, but I wasn't paying attention to the fact that he played a Duskblade. So we would have just let it go for sure. But because we didn't, he got to lock our Duskblade. So this game would have been over probably a lot more quickly. But he tried to use Sacrifice Messiah after the attack with Duskblade, which I was telling him that he couldn't do. So then he attacks with Vanguard, counterblast 1, and then he shoves his 2 crits into the soul and draws 2 cards. So he checks a crit trigger, a freeze ray, and a regular stride fodder. So we stride into Voltage again, just to get a high-powered attack. We attack him for 41, and he has to G-Guard us all the way through. So he does G-Guard and lock, and then he chooses 2 of his cards, unlocks them, and Soul Blast 2 with Alter Ego to draw 2 cards. He also uses Dark Metal Chameleon to unflip one as he's unlocking, and so he 3 to passes us because that's 56. And then we check 3 non-triggers, so we're fine with that. And then he didn't Omega lock our cards last turn with Flagellate, which I wasn't paying attention to. So we just unlocked them, which I don't know why he wouldn't Omega lock them, but it seems like a waste. But he uses Alter Ego skill again to lock Shatura. And then this time he attacks first with Duskblade because we were going to intercept if it was the other column. And then he attacked our Vanguard. So right now we're going to use the new G-Guard to flip a card and then make him bind one, basically. And the good thing when you're playing against Link Choker, if they were to like lock my whole board, Impede would be more useful to me because locked units don't count as units that are on the board. So I would be counted as having 0 units while he would have 4. So he would have to retire 1 and bind and then retire 1. So he's choosing to use Flagellate to Omega lock my front 2 again. IPG, easy peasy. And then he checks no triggers, which is good for us. We unflip 1. Then we stride. And we go into Closer Dragon. So what we could have actually done is we could have used like 2 of the chain bolt skill before Closer Dragon got off, but we would have had a counterboss 1 for Vanquisher, and it wouldn't have mattered because Closer Dragon does the same thing, which will eventually take it to drop zone and then make him bind it. So it even gets rid of his Dark Metal Chameleon because it gets rid of, or it gets around resist units. So we did end up playing Fatine on the Rearguard Circle and drawing 2 cards for each Fatine. And then we played a Vianney just in case we retire our opponent's card next turn. So fortunately for him, he had a PG when we're attacking for so big. But we didn't check a crit anyways, so it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have ended the game or anything. This time he does stride into Excelix. And he puts his card to bottom and draws a card on accident, I guess. So he had to search his deck and get a card, which I didn't really approve of, I guess, because you could like see your deck. But I guess if it was an accident, it's fine. So he's using a Wrestler skill, gets 2,000 and a skill. Then he's using the draw trigger to shove it into Soul and give Destiny Dealer plus 10k, which I don't really know why he did that, because before it was actually a number that was hitting my Vanguard. So we do G-Guard into Impede again, and we make him bind 1. And then because of that, Vianney goes off, so it goes back to our deck. We shuffle, draw, and then unflip 1. So that's the whole reason that I played Vianney the last turn, so that we could use it this turn. So then after Wrestler's effect, he locks our back row. And then he's using a Select skill to unlock all of our rear guards, and then unlock his, and it gets 3k. And then ours that unlock are retired because of Excelix effect. So we're attacked by 33, and we just 2 to pass it. So he does check a PG, but besides that, he doesn't check any triggers. So he just attacks us for 12, and then the other card can't hit. So we do go into VMAX here and play 2 Shaturas. So we attack his Vanguard with Shatura, which we probably should have just saved, I guess, because I forgot about his ability to intercept. So I attacked his whole board with VMAX, and then we checked triple drive, and we did get a stand trigger. So we get to just deal 1 damage to him because of Thunderstrike 5. And then we attack him, he G-guards 1 Shatura column, and then he PGs the other one. And then he has a stride fodder that was left in his hand. So he strides into Amnesty, who's basically his last play. And I knew that he was going to die now, because when he played the last card from his hand and it was Arrestor, Arrestor can't hit Great Composure, first of all, because it's 12k. So then he unlocked both of these to make this 32 for his final push, and I had a PG. So I just PG'd it, and he did check a critical trigger, putting it to his rear guard, and then I guarded it. And then he just left, which is why I put the marker of opponent left, open mouth face. But yeah, he left. So basically we would have won that game anyways, which is why I kept it on the recording. But and then the next game, we're doing the Narukami GB8 2. Then we're playing against Gurguit. So he attacks us for 12. We were changing our music that we were listening to during the time. So he was like, "Are you there?" or something. And I was like, "Yeah, we're there." So we're attacking with Shatura. He let Shatura hit because it was 18 to his 7, which is another way that Shatura can be like really painful to you. It makes your opponent like attack into it because they don't want to deal with it anymore. So we take 2 damage because he crits us, and then we guard our Shatura. We don't have a grade 3, so we just decide to play the rush game. And we probably should have attacked with our Shatura column first, to be honest, because in the case that we got a stand trigger, we want that pressure of Shatura going off. So then he goes into Sabreeze on us, And then I actually should have paid more attention to like how much damage he was at and stuff, because even if he was gonna Sabreeze me, I could have prevented him from Sabreezing and being able to get his on stride skill from it. So there was that. And then he attacked our Vanguard. And thank goodness he didn't check anything, because that could have been really brutal. But we check a draw trigger, so we stride with 3 grade 1s basically. And then we attack for 18, because we didn't want to be behind in the stride game basically, which we're already behind because we got Sabreezed. So he just PGs us. Then he strides into Holy Law Gurgwit. I have 2 grade 3s in my hand, and a grade 2 and a grade 2 on the board, so I have 10k shield in total, which means I can only block 1 decent column, and we're playing against Gold Paladin, so I'm guessing the columns are just going to be massive. So I kind of just wanted to scoop this game, but I just played it all the way out just because. So he attacks our Vanguard, we no guard, and he gets a crit, but it didn't matter if he got a crit or if he didn't get a crit, because we were going to die anyways. So yeah, that was game 2 pretty quick. Obviously, like, if we would have just had a grade 3 and a stride fodder from the jump, or from the start rather, like, I'm pretty sure our situation would have been a lot better to deal with. But opening back up Cardfight area again. We are loading our Narukami GB8 3. So this time we're playing against what seems to be new Luard from the future, since he's using like the new starter from this starter's from BT12, I think, something like that. But he checks and we do damage. And then I'm glad that I got to show you guys this matchup, because this matchup, like, kind of, like, Luard is at a heavy disadvantage against Narukami, I feel. But he plays a Grosnay on the rearguard circle in the back row so that we can't touch him with Vanquisher. And then we actually top deck into a stride fodder, which is amazing. But we attack with Zora's TPGs, we check a draw trigger, and Voltatorns, and we draw a Voltatorn off of the draw trigger, so we have Voltatorn for days basically now. And then when I was explaining that you could retire a card, or whenever your opponent retires a card for their effect, you can use the skill. I should have like called him on it and made him retire Bind One from Draco Kid skill, because he checked 2 grade 2s, and I could have made him get rid of one of his Grosnays at this point, which would have been really, really good, really solid. So he ends up playing a grade 1 and then going into the battle phase, attacking us. And so he attacks us for 18, and then I thought about it, because since I am pretty much a seasoned Luard player, like, I pretty much knew how to screw him up from this point of him only playing 3 rear guards. So we do use MP Dragon to make him bind 1, and then we use our starter to make him bind another 1. So then he attacks our Vanguard, checks a stand trigger, a crit trigger, and a PG. So we take 2 damage. And then he attacks us for a 37k Grosnay, which we are happy to take. We stride, and then we retire bind his Grosnay, so there's 2 Grosnays down that are gone forever that he can't get back. And then we are using Voltage skill. 3 cards are bound, so front row gets plus 9k. And then we're attacking with our rear guard, drawing a card, which we happen to draw a stand trigger, which kind of sucks, but he PG'd our attack. And then we got a crit, so, which didn't do anything because he PG'd. But he used Ritual to go into Phantom Blaster Diablo, thinking that he was going to kill me, but he didn't know that I had 2 heal triggers in my hand, I guess. So he uses Curse Eye Raven. Off of Curse Eye Raven, he calls a PG. Then he is doing the rest of his skills right now. He used another Cursed Raven to get a Belial Owl. He used the PG to retire Belial Owl and get itself and return one to the deck. And then he drew a card for Belial Owl, and now he's retiring 2 for Phantom Blaster effect. So I don't know what he's doing specifically right now, but he attacked for 36. And he didn't give us a chance to guard, so he had to go back basically. And then we did Bulwark and we did MP Dragon. So MP Dragon skill went off and retire binded a card, or retire bound. So it was 51 to his 36, which was a 3 to pass. But he thought it was 44, but he missed Bulwark's Thunderstrike. So it's 3 to pass. He put the crit all power to Vanguard, and then checked a Luard, and then checked a Swordbreaker. So he did not get the 3 to pass, and then he attacked our rear guard, which is fine. We stride into Closer Dragon and used the GB8 skill to make him bind everything from his drop zone. And the Leafall as well. And since he now has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cards in the bind zone, each one of our cards gets 22k. So that's very solid. He does let our first Shatura hit, and then we check 3 cards. One is a draw trigger, so we attack for 38. And then he uses Dismal and a 10k to guard, because he didn't want to lose the Airzus in his drop zone, I'm assuming. So he goes into Spectral. So he starts attacking us with the Morphesia column, but he's using he used Spectral skill on the PG, and then the PG skill on Belial Owl, I assume anyways. Oh yeah. So that's what happened with this game. So after he did that, I think he realized that he was just eventually going to lose, because he didn't have enough like important units left. So he just quit the game at that point. So that game ended on a quit. And then because that game ended on a quit, we decided to play one more game for you guys, because I usually try to give you guys 3 full matches to showcase a deck. And then we're going with Narukami GB8-4, and this is the last game. So this game we're playing against Bermuda, which is pretty interesting. We're playing against duos. So we go first, we ride, and then he plays a grade 1 and attacks our Vanguard. Unfortunately, we damage check Shatura, because that would have been great to have a second Shatura, but he lets the first Shatura hit anyways, and we draw a heal trigger. So then he lets the second attack hit, gets a trigger, and then he guards our Vanguard. So we no guard his Vanguard attack, but we guarded his rear guard attack. So he's able to use Roan skill to search. We attack for 9 to his Vanguard, he guards, then we attack for 9 again, he takes it, gets a crit, and then we attack with our Vanguard, we get a draw trigger and Vanquisher. So then he goes into Mirror as the stride, and I think this is a new Mirror stride or something like that. He Soul Blast 1 and searches a mirror card after returning a duo card, and then if he reveals 3 cards, he can search another mirror from his deck. So he searched 2 mirrors off of that basically. He attacks 26 to our Vanguard. We no guard, he checks a PG, a crit, and a draw trigger, which I was like, wow, that's pretty OP. So then we check a stand trigger, we put it to our Vanguard, then we guard for 10 when he attacks our Vanguard with Roan. So then we decided to stride and not go into Vanquisher, because in my opinion it didn't matter at this specific time, and I wanted to keep like extra cards in my hand, like Stride Fodder included. So we use Voltage skill to make him choose a rear guard and retire bind. Then we use a set of Draco Kid to make him choose another one, retire bind. And then is 13 to his Vanguard. And because we're Thunderstrike 2 now, Martial Arts Dragon gets 3k. So we're able to restand and then attack him for 14 and 12, which just gets like little numbers out of him basically. Which we were so close to getting that 3-of out of his hand, because duos kind of works that way where they need a 3-of in their hand to do their stuff. So he attacks us for 26. And I was thinking about it because basically the way that this read works, this new read, is he's going to restand it in the form of striding a new read, using the skill, and then he just gets -1 drive check. So I asked him if it was just 26. He says yes. So then I G-guard with Vitra, which for Thunderstrike 1 and a 5 is 2 to pass. So he gets a draw trigger and goes power to the rear guard. If he would have done Vanguard, he would have passed the attack, but he would have only done 1 damage anyways. So then he uses Reach skill to discard 3 cards of the same card and then attack us again with -1 drive. And then he checks 2 cards. And he actually checks a 3rd on accident, but I told him that was -1 drive and I reminded him. So then we use him P-Dragon to make him bind 1 card on his field, and he binds his booster. So he loses the boost for the attack basically, which makes us enough to guard him. Then we stride into Voltage, and we wanted to play that V80 in our hand, but instead we just play 2 Chain Bolts since we are on a Vanquisher Vanguard, and this would work out well with Voltage Horn. So we use Voltage Horn skill to make him bind 1, and then we use the skill of both Chain Bolts to give a card plus 4k, which we decided to give that 4k to Martial Arts Dragon, I believe. Yeah, we gave it to Martial Arts Dragon. Then because he bound 2 more, it makes it go up with Voltage's continuous skill. So I guess he couldn't guard it because of that. So we attack Vanguard 57, and we check a crit trigger, a heal trigger, power to Vanguard and heal, and a grade 3, and he takes it. So he loses to us, and that is GG. But that has been our Narukami Future Fight. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, like the video for me, it helps a lot. Comment down below, let me know what you thought about the video, and check out the description down below to see like all of our crazy new things happening and our social medias as well. That will be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. Thank you guys so much for supporting me on Patreon, and a tribute to that, as is every one of my videos, but a tribute to that will be at the end of this video. And thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.